What's up, guys? Nick G here. I'm going to do a quick little video about having returning dreams or nightmares after getting clean off of drugs, and in this case in particular weed. Other drugs could do the same thing, and I'm sure they do. But one of the biggest ones I noticed that sort of, and at least for me, I'm sure it varies from individual, but one of the ones that I noticed do that to people is weed. And for me, it was nightmares. Like, I didn't, it went back to like vivid nightmares, not really dreams. But I imagine that you could go back to having like pleasant dreams. It wouldn't just always be nightmares. But I think obviously the nightmares had to do with the information that I was taking in during the day. What I was focused on when I was awake and thinking about when I was awake. And a lot of the nightmares had to do with like, nuclear war, society collapsing, shit hitting the fan type scenarios, like apocalyptic type scenarios. And I don't know, my whole point about this is, I guess, and it really discouraged me from trying to be sober, because when I was awake, I was seeing all this bad thing. Like, I was finally like, it wasn't like just getting sober and like facing all of the problems on my individual level that I had been neglecting, like family time and financial responsibilities and how I treated people. It wasn't just that. It was also, I simultaneously like awoke, or woke up from my slump, like how people say it, like became aware of what's going on in the world, the type of manipulation and deception and propaganda that's put out there, being able to kind of see past that. And it was kind of simultaneously that I started to get sober and saw those things. So that's why my nightmares probably consisted of those types of scenarios. But my point is, metaphorically, it's kind of like, and this isn't really a secret, I imagine even most people that use drugs all the time might even understand this, but it's kind of like when you use drugs, weed, whatever, and I guess I get it, a little side note, I'm not bashing weed entirely, although I do think people can form a habitual use pattern with it. And that's, what is a drug habit? To me, that sounds like the definition of an addiction or something like that. But I get it. Compared to other things, it's not that bad. Has medicinal purposes, I understand. I'm not bashing on it entirely, but I see a lot of people, sit there and kind of just abuse it and sort of just clock out, check out. And I understand wanting to do that, like the desire to, hide away or, dump some shit on your brain so you don't have to worry or think about it. Even though weed kind of increases my anxiety about some things. But, yeah, the whole point is, metaphorically, when I would go to sleep, I would have to even continue to face these problems that are facing the world and the nation, and even on my own individual level in my personal life. And when you take away that crutch of the drug, it's just like you really got to stand on your own 2 feet and like see that and face it down. And the crazy thing is, when you're using drugs, it's not like those things don't exist. They're still existing, and they're still getting worse. It just gives you the perceived solution to the problem, or the perceived, a temporary solution, or the illusion of a solution to whatever's going on. And really, what all that happens is when you continue to ignore the problem or run away from it, all they do is get bigger. Like a classic example is like, if you, a very small, low level, example, not on like any higher level, would be like, if you didn't study for a test, like, does the test go away? No, all that happens is, as the test day approaches, you get more and more anxious, and, if you never prepared, you sit down and you don't know like you fail. You don't know a thing to put down on the paper. And this is sort of like where the world is and where most people are and where I was for a long time, and I still do that in other ways, but not so much anymore. I try to really confront problems and face them, and by doing that, you get stronger. By taking the responsibility, you gain strength. It puts pressure on you to grow, and I've said that a million times, and that's the benefit of it. And I guess the benefit of checking out is, just claiming that you have no responsibility, and, in your messed up way of viewing things, in my opinion, you feel like you bear no responsibility for your actions or how you might be perpetuating certain things in the world. And again, that doesn't make it go away. It's just the drugs kind of prevent people from caring. And I know I'm talking about all drugs, really, not just necessarily weed, but it definitely numbs people. You know what I mean? And that's sort of that's an appeal that people like, and I get it. I totally understand. But if you have a bunch of people collectively acting this way through, not just substances, but television, video games, and I used to love video games, and I still do. Don't play them as much as I used to, but if you have a bunch of people collectively just looking for something to numb themselves, clock out, veg out type stuff, the vast majority of people are doing that, we're collectively heading towards, hell, or just the problems of the individual and the planet are just going to grow and grow and grow, and we're going to have to face the consequences at some point. They don't go away if we just all, claim ignorance or are ignorant, and the problems don't vanish based on that. I think to a large degree, with younger people specifically, I don't know, if you look at the 70s and stuff, I know drug use was really big, so this is kind of like contradictory to my point. But I feel like younger people used to care, used to be more, and maybe this is just looking at history in hindsight, because it always seems, like the glory days, and it's not always true. It's just kind of like you remember the good stuff. But it seems like young people seem to care more about activism, to care more about like what was going on in the world. Like you would see people like, massive amounts of young people protesting the Vietnam War. And, I feel like you didn't really see that kind of outcry. I mean, I'm not saying people didn't, because people did. But I feel like you didn't see as much of an outcry, for the deception that goes on a regular basis in this country today. Like the whole Middle East fiasco that's been going on for over a decade now, and we're still meddling over there. You don't really see people giving a shit about that. And again, partially it's our fault, because people sign up for this stuff, people pay their taxes, and that finances this stuff. And I get it, you're threatened with prison time and all sorts of other things, but we do bear some responsibility. That's my point. And I don't know, the whole metaphor I was trying to get at clearly with the nightmares returning when you stop drug use when you go to sleep is just that wave of stuff you've been neglecting, kind of, especially in your subconscious, but coming back to reveal itself to you. And it's really a big it really, to me, it was a very big influence for me to continue using. I would be like, damn, dude, I'm awake and I have to worry about all this stuff, then I go to sleep and I see it, and it was just like, man, what's the point? What good am I doing? But I endured, and for the most part, I don't have those nightmares as much anymore, and I think I got stronger from it, because I didn't cave into the temptation. I did plenty of times, actually. I'm not going to say I never did. Definitely relapsed on drug use. Not just talking about weed, but all kinds of other things. Plenty of times. It took trial and error and incremental change. But I finally got there. And that's sort of a frightening proposition too, because I know I get off topic all the time, but the if I look at it the way it happened for me individually, and then if I apply that to the world as a whole, it was very incremental for me. Like, gradual steps, gradually. It was very slow. And it seems like to really revert all the problems that are going on in the world, like the massive amount of, like, the pile of shit that is so deep that we're like, waist deep in right now. It seems like we would have to, quote unquote, wake up tomorrow. Like, we'd have to, like, wake up different people tomorrow or very soon. Like, literally overnight, collectively, somehow, someone zaps some, information in our brain and we can finally see clearly overnight. And obviously that's not going to happen. Maybe something like that could happen with if an individual comes along that can really, like, catalyze and speak to people and make them, aware of certain things, or if an event that comes along and it's clearly, if an event comes along and it's enough to really wake people up. But usually if a catalyzing event like that is like a 9/11, like a false flag, and it does get people's attention for sure, but it's usually all that attention's usually harnessed and then directed at the wrong culprits and the wrong targets. So I don't know how we collectively, aim at the right things and aim our frustration and anger and efforts and energy and awareness at the right thing. Because people are going to disagree up and down all day, and a lot of people have been completely brainwashed, to be honest. And a lot of people just don't care. And I think, I know there's a lot of other influences, such as, propaganda and GMOs and chemtrails and, peer pressure and human psychology and human fears itself, and all these problems that are firmly rooted in the human brain. But I think, I'm not pinning too much of the problem on drugs, but I think to a large degree that's where a lot of, at least the young people's, like, complete apathy is coming from. Like, complete just not caring about shit. And it's, like, glorified, you know what I mean? Like, to not care, to not feel, to not empathize. It's like, at least people, like, claim that in the way they openly present themselves to the world, but I don't really believe they feel that way inside if they, ever put down the drug long enough to feel anything. I'm not saying weed completely robs you of that, but alcohol, if you're an alcoholic, will do that to you. Heroin, other drug. If you're a long-time drug user, that stuff, it'll rob you of, like, I mean, that voice is still there of right and wrong, and, that empathy and things are still there, but it's really buried, and it's really muffled, and it's really numbed out. And, maybe I'm making a blanket statement about young people, and maybe it's just, like, the environment that I was, kind of grew up in, and the people that I know and I see. But, yeah, to a large degree, man, I feel like so many people are just so caught up in the drugs that it keeps them rooted in, like, the root chakra, low level type consciousness awareness. Like, that's all they can really care about. And how I was saying about the nightmares, it's like it prevented me from having nightmares, which is like a perceived benefit. Again, I use the word perceived because I don't really see the temporary forgetting or neglecting of problems as a benefit. Like, they don't go away. It's just an illusion. That's why I say perceived. It's not real. It's just, oh, for now I feel all right. Okay, well, nothing's actually solved. You're just avoiding the inevitable, and you're gonna have to answer to it eventually. But sure, there's that, perceived benefit. And then on the flip side of it, especially with weed, I'm going to use this is probably my biggest rebuttal against weed. And I know this is different, it varies from individual, and I know this is sort of a negative stereotype about it, but I think there is a grain of truth to it. And if you can't handle that, like, I don't know, move along. I don't know what to say to you, but I think it sort of drains out a little bit of people's ambition, you know, and I think there's other things that do that. But yeah, I see that. I mean, I see that in myself when I used to smoke all the time, when I used to drink all the time, and I see that in other people. And it makes your thoughts not as clear, you know? It makes you process stuff slower, it makes you think slow. I guess I understand it's different for individuals. I'm not making a huge blanket statement about all users, that they're all lazy and they never did anything, because obviously drug users, like, people have done some amazing things and they've smoked pot. I'm not saying you're automatically a lazy individual, but what I'm saying is, when you go to sleep, you also don't have dreams. You don't have the nightmare, but you don't have the dreams. And I mean that, like, metaphorically, like, I don't know, like, they just get the drug and they're satisfied. There's no, like, ultimate... And I know this is completely... It's not solely based on the drug. There's other variables, and individuals can be vastly different. I get it. But, to a large degree, I see the young people, they kind of just, you know, if they even take care of the bare minimum of what they're supposed to, like, just go to school, just, you know, work your job, whatever. But they just come home, they get off, and they take the drug, and that's it. That's their goal. That's their peak. You know what I'm saying? That's the dream. And I don't know. When you take that away, it leaves a vacancy open for something greater to be put in there. And I'm not saying you couldn't have drug use and have that greater goal. I guess I'm really saying that people need a goal to aim at, a greater goal that benefits them, the people around them, and the nation and the world simultaneously, if that's achievable. But I think drugs muffle that out a little bit, for sure. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the world would be a better place if we were all sober all the time. I guess it comes down to moderation, and I know drugs aren't solely irresponsible. I'm not trying to be like a Dare commercial, you know, like, but I feel like nowadays, especially, there's not a lot of people sort of like speaking out against it that much anymore. Like, I don't know, like, it's just totally embraced. Like, yeah, man, at least from the narratives that I see in the minds of all the people that I see on social media and around me and things like that, all the young people, it's just totally embraced. Like, there's no, yeah, dude, especially with weed, like, there's this narrative, there's this premise that it's 100% good and there's no potential for abuse of it. There's no, and drugs aren't this pure construct. There's consequences, and I don't know, I guess people don't realize that yet because, like I said, it gives you the perceived illusion or benefit of a solution, and it's not like as soon as you do that, the problem comes and drops it's not like an anvil hitting your head. It's not like instantly you do something wrong or whatever but I guess it's because they haven't been made uncomfortable enough yet, and it hasn't, even though some people have go to extreme lengths to continue that lifestyle, they'll lose all kinds of things, and the obvious solution seems to be to stop. They still won't see it. I don't know. But, yeah, I guess, you know, I'm just wondering if other people have that experience, and I guess if they understand what I'm saying. I'm not trying to bash on you if you do drugs, because I used to live like that a long time. I just want to know if people will see the split, like, that drugs might cause with, like, you know, the neglect of problems that need to be dealt with, and also the to some degree it's good to feel content and satisfied, but sometimes I feel like the drug does that too much to the point where you don't dream, like, aka have the higher goal. And I'm not saying that drugs do that to everybody, but that's the whole point I've been trying to get across with this video, and I guess I don't know why it took 20 minutes to explain it, but thanks for listening, guys. That's pretty much all I had to say.